Hi, everyone. This is Phil Travis, and this is week 8 here at EOU. This is Military History 360. This week, we're reading from Ways of War, Chapter 13. We're discussing the Vietnam War, which is an area of particular interest for myself. Um, so we're reading Chapter 13 from Ways of War. I have a recorded video lesson for you as well. I also have a PBS documentary um, video that I want you to watch, and that is on the roots of the Vietnam War. And there's a little video quiz that I want you to take along with it. Just open the video in a separate screen and, um, and take the quiz while you watch the documentary. Um, so, Ways of War, Chapter 13, we're looking at the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a hugely significant um, conflict for the United States. When I started my graduate career, I originally was going to do my work on Vietnam. I decided ultimately to write on the U.S. Contra War, the Reagan administration in Central America. And I recently had my first book actually published called Reagan's War on Terrorism in Nicaragua. That was originally based on that dissertation. But Vietnam was always an era of immense interest for me because it was a conflict that had so many questions and it had such a great deal of influence on not only U.S. military history but also on changes and developments in domestic United States in American society. The Vietnam War is always an area of significant interest for me. And so we're going to look at Vietnam this week. We'll also look at it next week. Though next week we are going to kind of split the week between our discussion of Vietnam and our discussion of our book, Counter Jihad, which is the book we'll be reading this week and discussing next week and week 10. It's on the U.S. wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. I think you'll find Counter Jihad a fascinating book. Um, we have a book review on Counter Jihad due next week, the end of the week. It's a 1,200 word book review. I have put a book review checklist up for you in modules so that you can easily just look at the basic requirements for the book review so you don't, lose points for something completely unnecessary. So go see that checklist and modules for this week so you can start working on the book review as you read the book this week and next week and make sure you don't miss anything in the basic kind of format and basic directions for the review. Okay, I think that's it. Chapter 13 this week. My recorded lecture on the Vietnam War, the PBS documentary on the roots of the Vietnam War, and the video quiz. Plus, be reading Counter Jihad and be working on that book review. See the book review checklist. The factoid for this week is this. The bombing campaign under Lyndon Johnson in Vietnam from 1965 through 1968 was known as Operation Rolling Thunder. And Operation Rolling Thunder was a bombing campaign that was based on the principle of gradualism, which was the idea that we would slowly escalate the level of bombing on the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong until we found the enemy's breaking point and they decided to come to the table and talk. So it was a gradualist escalation of force, and it was very problematic because it resulted in the United States sliding into a conflict, escalating the bombing until ultimately the United States was deeply embedded in the conflict in terms of its own military power in the region and also economically speaking. And ultimately, it was based on a plan that really was not clear how it would be successful. We had no idea where the enemy's breaking point was. We had no idea how many bombs had to be dropped. And ultimately, we had no idea how many American soldiers would have to be sent there to fight in order to find this elusive breaking point that would bring the North Vietnamese to the peace table. Here's the factoid. During the early phases of Operation Rolling Thunder, the United States used to actually warn the North Vietnamese government that we were coming to bomb an installation of theirs or a military post or something like this. We would literally message them and tell them we were going to go bomb, for example, Plant A, and we're going to bomb it on Tuesday. get all your people out of there because we don't want anybody to get hurt, but this is what we're going to do. And then we would go and we would bomb the plant, we'd fly back, and we would keep doing it again, and we'd bomb more and more. And eventually, the idea was eventually they'd give up because they didn't want their entire country to be destroyed. But it's a real problematic approach because, of course, they're just going to move to where you're not bombing. They're just going to retool to kind of mold to a bombing campaign that is gradually increasing and also highly limited. All right, so post that factoid in the extra credit discussion board for this week. You see it at the bottom of modules. Get your extra point towards a test grade at the end of the term. And make that post no later than Wednesday by midnight. All right, guys, let's have a great week.